What is going on, guys? Hope you're doing well today. Coach Desi here from Team Outlier, and the astute viewers among you may have noticed that my background has subtly changed a little bit. I don't know how well you can see that, but that is because we just won Raw Nationals in 3 different age categories: the Men's Raw Open, the Women's Raw Junior, and the Men's Raw Junior. For our Men's Open, that is actually 1 spot better than we did last year, and our Women's Open team got 3rd, which is also 1 spot better than we did last year. So I'm pretty thrilled about it. In case you couldn't tell, this has been a goal of mine really since I started this team 5 years ago, and this is also the meet performance I think I'm most proud of. The main reason being that besides the outcome, our team that we brought has literally never performed better. Of the 7 lifters we brought, they combined for a total of 3 missed lifts out of 63. So that's a 95% success rate. And I want to note that that is not sandbagging those lifters either. Every single one of those 7 lifters PR'd their total, and the majority of them PR'd every single lift as well. So what I thought I would do today is talk you through 3 of the biggest battles for the podium that we encountered on the road to this victory at Raw Nationals, just to give you a little bit of insight as to what high-level battles in powerlifting look like from the inside. So if that sounds good to you, let's get into it. So we're gonna go in order here, and the first one I have to talk about is Kyle Dawson, who competed in the primetime session on Friday night for the 82.5 kg weight class. Coming into it, even after a seriously lifetime performance at our state championship back in January, Kyle was going up against some pretty heavy hitters. Our main goal at this meet was to get him onto the podium, which is top 3, because those top 3 finishers would receive their pro card. Doing a little bit of scouting before the meet, there were 2 lifters I thought that even on Kyle's best day would probably beat him. So it really was a battle for that 3rd place position and that final pro card giveaway, because there was also a cluster of 5 or 6 people all within 10 or 15 kilos of each other that all wanted that 3rd spot. So this is a case study that you might want to listen up for if you have a bigger deadlift and you're going to be pulling for the win. Kyle's best pull was 705 pounds back at state, but that moved pretty dang easily, so I was very confident loading pretty much whatever we needed to do. So our plan was obviously to go 8 for 8 before that last deadlift, and then just load whatever was needed. Squats started off the day super strong. Kyle is an absolutely massive squatter, but I have to say, I am used to him closing out the flight and squatting last, and this time he was in the middle of the pack. I'm not used to there being 82.5 kg lifters out squatting my dude, so that was kind of scary almost going into it, and we definitely had our work cut out for us. That being said, Kyle did what we came to do. He absolutely smoked his 600-pound opener. We jumped to 628. He smoked that as well. And then on his 3rd attempt, we loaded an all-time PR of 655, which he absolutely crushed too. And I think we maybe had 2.5 kilos left in the tank. So we're off to a great start. Then bench rolled around, and this is usually where Kyle loses a couple of kilos to his competitors. Even though we were opening up heavier than we had ever opened before with 330 pounds, we were still at the very beginning of the flight. So we did what we had to do here, which was go 3 for 3. We smoked 330, jumped to 347, he crushed that, and that set us up for an all-time PR of 363 on his last attempt, which he nailed it, but I don't think he even had a half a kilo left in the tank after that. So we have a 462.5 kilo subtotal at this point, and we're opening up deadlifts with 650 pounds, which I think is good for 7th place, which you might think ain't looking too good, but I was still pretty confident. We had a plan that we were going to stick to, and I was confident in it. At this point, I did the math, and Kyle has to outpull Antonino Fazio by 10 kilos, and he was only opening 2.5 kilos less than us. Kyle also had to outpull Trevor Bolus by 2.5 kilos to tie him, and then he would be able to win on body weight because he weighed in lighter than Trevor did. So now everybody hits their opener, and placings are pretty much the same. Fazio loads 302.5 for his second, Bolus loads 307.5, and so I decide to load 310, which is 683 pounds, just to stay ahead of Trevor and pretty close to being ahead of Fazio as well. Once again, everybody hits, but I'm feeling pretty confident in Kyle's pull versus the other 2 guys. The other guys I felt like didn't have quite as much room left in the tank as Kyle did. So 3rds roll around, and Fazio loads 315 and Trevor loads 322.5, which means if they both hit, Kyle has to pull 325, which would be an all-time PR in order to beat them. Now Fazio ends up missing, but I can't drop below 322.5 because it will have already been loaded on the bar for Trevor, who was pulling before Kyle. But if Trevor misses, I plan to drop the 2.5 kilos just to make it that much easier. However, Trevor hits, credit to him. And now Kyle has to pull 325 or he loses to Trevor. And he absolutely nails this. Now nobody can catch him and he solidifies himself in third place. This was a great battle, tons of fun, with Kyle PRing all 3 lifts and his total. He also PR'd his dots by like 10 points, got him up to around 535, and he won his pro card, which was huge for us. That's the first lifter I've ever coached to win a pro card. He was also the only 82.5 kilo lifter at Raw Nationals who went 9 for 9. The next battle was the following evening in the primetime session for the 110 kg class with my lifter, Braxton Large. Coming into this, he was already ranked 3rd or 4th, but I don't think anybody understood how much stronger we had gotten because those numbers were last year's numbers at regionals, and we had put on a ton of strength in the years since, and we were planning to win this whole thing. This is a case study you should listen to if you're more of a subtotal lifter, which Braxton is, and it's going to be very different strategically from what Kyle's was. Braxton has a monstrous squat and bench press, and he has a big deadlift too, but not compared to some of the guys we were going up against, which you'll see in a little bit. So we come into this meet, it's Braxton's 4th meet ever, and his very first nationals. We start off squatting, and it's pretty immediately clear we're in the driver's seat. People are missing on depth, people are missing on strength, and then there's Braxton absolutely blasting everything, and I think getting 0 red lights the whole time. He pretty much launches his opener of 672 into the stratosphere, and we go up to 711 on his second attempt, and it moves so good that I load 744 for an all-time PR on his last attempt. This one was work for sure. I think this was the exact perfect call for the day. But anyway, we finished squats in first place, and we're leading every other competitor in the 110s. Then we move on to bench, which again, another specialty of Braxton's. We open 10 kilos heavier than anyone else with 457 pounds. And again, Braxton just blasts this off the chest. He was slipping a little bit through the feet, so we cleaned off his shoes and I sent him back out there for 474, which is an all-time PR for him. And he crushed that as well. Now, Braxton's bench is a little bit tricky. He's got a very relatively narrow grip and a very explosive style, which means that he makes everything look pretty easy until it's not. We also know that when deadlifts roll around, we're going to be losing our lead a little bit, and we absolutely have to go 6 for 6 right now and put up the biggest subtotal we can. So I decided to load 485 on his third, and again, he blasts it. And there's a little bit of work in the middle, towards the top. I do think we maybe left some kilos in the tank here, but honestly, I'm not sure how much. It's probably less than you think, maybe 2.5, maybe 5. But either way, we're 6 for 6 right now. He just outbenched the next strongest guy by 12.5 kilograms. And we're sitting with a 57.5 kilo lead going into deadlifts over the guy in second place. But that dude is Khalil Zaki, and his best competition deadlift is 887 pounds. So this is where scouting your competition becomes important. This guy has a massive deadlift, but all of his biggest pulls, I notice, are on a deadlift bar, which especially at that level, when you're talking about north of 800 pounds, can make a pretty big difference. So scanning his open powerlifting page, I see that his best pulls on a power bar in competition are much lower, more like 795 to 815. I also see that he misses a pretty large percentage of his third attempts. And that's not to knock him whatsoever. This is just sort of how it goes when you're a deadlift specialist. Third attempt deadlift is the most missed lift in all of powerlifting, with only about a 50% success rate. And obviously the guy is going to put on there whatever he needs to win, which is going to put him in these situations more often than not. I also see that he just missed an 840 pound deadlift at the Arnold earlier this year, just a few months ago. So in my mind, if we can sort of push him into deep water to the point where he needs to load more than, maybe 820, we've got a really good chance of him missing it and us winning. Braxton has a previous best of 700 pounds, although it was pretty easy and it just was what we needed at the time to win that meet. It wasn't necessarily his top end. Khalil needs to outpull him by 115 pounds, but Braxton is pulling first in the whole flight. So we open up with 650, we jumped to 689 on his second attempt. And again, Braxton is so far ahead of everyone that people are scrambling to pull ahead of him. Zaki pulls a successful 804 on his second attempt. And watching that and his opener, at this point, I'm honestly thinking, I don't think that he has that much left today. So I have to load something that I know Braxton can hit on his third attempt, which I decide to be 711, because if he misses, the dream is pretty much over for sure. Braxton smoked 711. It was a bit of work at the top. I think maybe we had a few more kilos in the tank here again if we needed them. Sometimes his pull does get a little bit wonky at lockout, so who really knows? So now, we are done. We have done everything we can do. We've gone 9 for 9. We've put up an 880 kilo total. And now Zaki needs to pull 827 to win, but he doesn't load 827. He loads the American record, which is 840. And I'm thinking, maybe he doesn't see it. Maybe he doesn't know that he doesn't need that much to win. Seems super risky to me. And that's honestly giving me some confidence at this point, because if he misses this, it's over and we win. And then, yeah, he crushed that. And watching this back, he had more in the tank too. He beat us by 6 keys, even though he didn't have to. So even if we got an extra 2.5 keys on bench and deadlift for an extra 5, that wouldn't have even mattered. And if we got even 2.5 or 5 more than that, he might have had the extra room in the tank anyway on this day. All credit to him for another 9 for 9 performance. But on our end, Braxton still got second place at his very first nationals, also won his pro card, and PR'd all of his lifts and his total, where he ended with 1,940 pounds, which is like a 70-pound PR. So it's tough to be too mad at this one, but I can't wait for the inevitable rematch. Okay, and then the third and final battle that I want to showcase was on prime time on Sunday, which was day 4, where I was handling big Nate Redwing, who is a super heavyweight. Nate's a friend of mine. Actually, he's won Raw Nationals before in 2023 back in Memphis, so our goal was to win again to get that gold medal. He had some fierce competition in the form of Antonio Mu from Hawaii, and this is a case study of what to do if you are facing someone who is a big subtotal specialist, which Antonio is. So the day starts off and we are opening heaviest in our flight on squat. Now normally that's a great thing, but Nate likes to open pretty heavy, and he likes to take relatively small jumps, especially for someone as strong as he is. So that didn't necessarily mean we were going to finish with the heaviest squat. So we opened with 777, which is just 10 pounds lighter than Nate's all-time best, which he hit back in January. We hit it, and then we jumped to 804 on his second attempt. Antonio opens much lighter at 716, but jumps much bigger to 777. I think probably to pace us in case we missed 804, but we didn't. Nate smoked 804 for an all-time PR. However, there was definitely some work in there, and he had been hoping for 826 on his last attempt coming into the meet. We talked about it. We settled on a smaller jump to 815, which he ultimately ended up missing. Antonio hits 777 on his second, and then also jumps to 815 on his third. However, he makes it, so now he's 5 kilos ahead of us. On bench, I had a feeling we were going to be losing some ground, which is a pretty crazy thing to say about someone who benches over 550 pounds, but this was a crazy meet, and that's exactly what happened. On our end, we had a great outing. Nate opens with 529, jumps to a PR match of 545, and then finishes with a successful all-time PR of 556 in the bench press. Now, Antonio, on the other hand, this guy opens with 545. He jumps to 595 on his second attempt. He gets some red lights because one of his feet slips. Then he jumps to 624 for an absolute smoke show of an American record. So not only does he now have a 35.5 kilo lead on us, he has a half kilo chip advantage because that bench press was an American record. What does that mean? Effectively, it negates the fact that we have body weight advantage on this guy because we can't tie him anymore because we have to load in increments of 2.5 kilos. So coming into the deadlift, I do the math, and Nate has to outpull Antonio by 37.5 kilos. No easy feat, but I believe it's possible given that Antonio's best pull is 310 and Nate's is 345. Originally, Nate had planned to open with 744. I convinced him to drop it to 716. namely because our goal now is to stay behind Antonio and keep the pressure on him and to conserve energy for a big third attempt. So Nate makes easy work of 716 on his opener, and we take a smallish jump to 733 to stay those 37.5 kilos ahead of Antonio's second attempt. So now if he misses his third, we win automatically. His coach then puts in 705 for his third attempt, which would mean Nate would have to pull 788 if he successfully makes this. So that's what I put in for the time being, but you are allowed 2 changes to your last deadlift, up or down, and there was more of that to come. I had a feeling that this might have been a bluff, and it was, with Antonio's coach dropping at the last second to a 683 third attempt for his final pull, which was a PR match for him, I believe. And he hit that. And once he hit that, I dropped Nate's last attempt to whatever it needed to be, which was 766 in this case, which would still be an all-time PR for him. If he missed, Antonio wins. If he makes, he gets gold. And thankfully, he nailed it, and Nate Redwing becomes the 2-time national heavyweight champion. He also won his pro card at this meet. He PR'd all 3 lifts, and he PR'd his total from January by like 50 pounds, finishing with a lifetime best of 2,127. All of these battles for the podium helped us secure the overall team victory, take home the national title, and I just can't wait to see what our lifters can do now at Midwest Regionals, which is about 8 weeks away from the time of recording. I hope you found these case studies to be both entertaining and informative. If you have any questions about them, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if you want to join a national championship winning team and maybe make it to Raw Nationals yourself someday, be sure to check out our coaching services at beoutlierstrong.com. I'll see you next time.